Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Ramble. Today we're going to be discussing the unfortunate 3-1 loss against Man City. As ever, I'm joined by my co-rambler Dom. How are you, mate? You good?
Well, I'm caught in two minds, really. Obviously, I'm deflated, and after that disappointing result that we had yesterday. But I always want to try and have a positive side to, any sort of result we have, good or bad. So I'm trying to be optimistic. But yeah, definitely disappointed. How are you?
Yeah, I think deflating is the main take, isn't it? Like, not just this game, like in particular, just the last few games all compounded into one emotion, if you will. It's just all a bit like the loss at Everton, the draw at Brentford, and then it's made it a lot worse having dropped those points coming into this game. So yeah, I just feel a bit but yeah, let's try and let's try and pick the bones out of it, and I'm sure there's plenty of positives to take. So let's get into the team sheets, as we always do on the podcast, on the post-match anyway. So I suppose the big talking point is the fact that, a few hours before kickoff, we had this news that Partey had picked up a bit of a thigh injury, I think it was, in training the day before. Was that a big blow for you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You see that's a hammer blow to our team because of how, integral Partey is to our whole build-up, our whole, defensive work as well. He's, an anchor in that midfield. So to lose him just before kickoff, it was devastating, really. But, we've got Jorginho in. We got him in from the January transfer window. So I was sort of excited to see how he would perform and how he would get on, and at such short notice as well. So it was a real opportunity for him to get some minutes and show that he's worth the transfer that we paid for him. But yeah, obviously I was really disappointed to see that Partey wasn't in the starting 11. And we also had Tomiyasu. He came in for Ben White as well, didn't he? To be honest, I was all for this rotation, just because Ben White, he's been kind of under par in recent games, and I thought Tomiyasu, he's not really been given that much of a chance this season. And last season, he was probably one of our best fullbacks, if not our best fullback. So, yeah, I was happy to see Tomiyasu come into the fold. Were you happy as well? Or?
I wasn't unhappy. I think between the two players, there's not much in it. They're both really, really good right backs at the end of the day. And I guess, like, earlier in the season, we used Tomiyasu. This was at left back, but in that big game against Liverpool, where it really sort of paid off, didn't it? He managed Salah really, really well. So I think that was maybe in Arteta's thinking, that Tomiyasu just sort of steps up in these big games. And, Ben White's had a few little niggly games here, hasn't he? He's not been at his normal level. There's no diss on Ben White. He's been amazing this season, but he's just not quite been there. So I guess it made sense to that degree. It just didn't. It wasn't Tomiyasu's night, though, was it? At the end of the day. So now, talking about it post match, you hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you just can't help but think, was he thrown in at the deep end and maybe could have been integrated in an easier game? Yeah,
definitely. I completely agree with you there, but it's always important to remember, like, the way that you were feeling pre-match, I was completely all for it, because, you can always say in hindsight, in retrospect, and you see a lot of people on Twitter say this as well, like, why on earth are we playing Tomiyasu when we've got Ben White? And it's like, a few days ago, we were seeing Ben White, who wasn't performing very well, and people were tweeting, why on earth are we not playing Tomiyasu when Ben White's underperforming? So it's like, no matter what Arteta does, he's going to get criticism if that player doesn't perform well. And yeah, as you say, unfortunately for Tomiyasu, he had a bit of a stinker today, didn't he?
I'm certainly not criticising Arteta. Like, it's either way, it was a right call. They're both brilliant right backs. You can't really make a wrong decision. But yeah, it just wasn't his day. Made a few errors. One in particular led to their first goal, obviously, the back pass. Just didn't quite see De Bruyne out at the corner of his eye. Would you say Saliba could have done a little better in anticipating this back pass and maybe sort of covering that De Bruyne run? Or do you think that's maybe being a bit harsh?
I think it is a little bit harsh because I think De Bruyne, with all of his football intelligence, I think he's expecting, if this is mishit or underhit, then he's already on the move to try and get that ball. But where I feel a bit sorry for Tomiyasu is just before he plays the ball, you actually see Arteta pointing back to Ramsdale as if to say to Tomiyasu, play it back to the keeper and then we'll recycle the ball. Because if it's Ben White there, I think maybe he just hoiks that into row Z. He just boots it out and then we reset. Yeah. But I think Tomiyasu, who is under a bit of pressure, I know he's meant to be really two-footed, but it was on his left foot, which isn't his dominant foot. And it's a bouncing ball. He's running back. He's got pressure on his back. And he doesn't really look, and he misplaces the pass as well. And then De Bruyne is on his toes. And to be fair to De Bruyne, that is an absolutely spectacular finish to score from there on his wrong foot as well. I think if there's any player on the pitch that you don't want that to fall to, it's Kevin De Bruyne. And unfortunately it did. And he converted it. And that was pretty much the story of our night, wasn't it? With Man City being super clinical. But I don't think Saliba was too much at fault for that. I think especially in the first half with going man to man with Erling Haaland, I think Saliba did a pretty good job at handling Haaland in the first half.
I think so,
yeah. And to be honest, I think it was more when Haaland wasn't getting too much joy from Saliba in that first half. He kind of switched over to the other side and he was putting more pressure on Gabriel. And then that's where we eventually became unstuck. So, yeah, what do you think about the Tomiyasu error?
Look, it's just one of those things. It's going to happen from time to time. You just hope it doesn't happen in these big games because, it really hurts you. You can't afford to do it in these games. And on the flip side, you can't also afford to miss the chances that we get that we get as well. We had a few pretty decent ones, didn't we, with Eddie Nketiah. A few headed misheaded opportunities, if that makes sense. Just he didn't quite get the right contact. Is what I'm trying to say. Like in that Man United game when we went 1-0 down, we needed that goal and Eddie provided. Yes, it was a simpler header, but this was the sort of game where we really needed him to step up and just, really finish one of these chances or, just at least get him on target and work the keeper and just cause a bit of pressure. We just didn't see it. So that was a big frustration for me in the first half because for me, I think we were the better team in that first half, marginally, but I think we were the better team.
Oh yeah. Especially in that first half, we controlled possession. As you say, we created a few chances. That golden opportunity for Eddie Nketiah between the sticks, which he should have converted. And as we all know, if you let these chances go to waste, then against a top quality team like Man City, they're going to punish you if you make any mistake. And it was clear that Arteta had designed the team to only play out from the back and not to go long at all, which I know it is sensible against a team like Man City, because if you give them the ball, you're not going to get it back for at least 5-10 minutes because they are such a possession-based team. However, the way that they pressed as well, sometimes I think you've just got to... I don't like it when players ignore their manager, but sometimes you just got to take it into your own hands. And if you feel like you're under pressure, then if you just boot the ball out, then you can reset and you can defend it and then you can carry on. But yeah, I think we were under pressure by design from playing out from the back for the majority of the game. And at certain points, we had really good passages of play, decent passing and moving. Most notably, actually, Jorginho. He played really well today. Actually, I think, if anything, he was one of our better players, which it just shows you that he filled in part issues quite well. He was integral in the middle. Him, Xhaka, doing those little triangles with Zinchenko, and that actually got us up the pitch one or two times. And we were able to create some chances. But yeah, it definitely put us under pressure. And you could tell there was players like Gabriel and Tomiyasu weren't too comfortable being constantly under pressure and having to make those quick fire decisions. Yeah,
I completely agree with Jorginho, actually. I thought, before the game, I thought it was either going to be like an absolute disaster, or it would go the other way and he'd have a really good game. And thankfully, especially that first half, I thought he was really, really good. The only tiny little niggle I had was he tends to overcommit himself quite a lot for the interceptions. And, a handful of times he got it right, but then there's a couple of times where he got it wrong and it sort of exposed our back line a little bit. It didn't cost us in one of those instances, but you could see how it potentially could have, But overall, I think, he did really, really well for his full debut, starting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there was a couple of times as well, most notably, he picked up really good positions, especially in our own box when Man City were attacking. He wouldn't get sucked in. You'd see our back four go towards the penalty spot, and he'd stand sort of around that edge of the box area where Man City, they cut the ball back. They like to go down the wings and cut the ball back. And he was in the right position just to gather the ball, gobble it up, and then recycle it back out. And as you say, there were a few times as well in the middle of the park where Man City were putting us under pressure and they were starting to pass through us, and he would just intercept it and then it would turn over into an attack straight away. I think he actually intercepted the ball, and I think it was Eddie Nketiah who passed it through to, who had a really good opportunity to then pass it out to the left. I think it was to Saka, but he didn't take it, and he went on his own, didn't he? And it didn't. Nothing came of it. But it's that quick fire decision making that we need in our attacking players, making the right decisions, and that's what you saw from Man City today, and unfortunately what you didn't see from our forward players today.
So just before the end of the first half, we get a penalty, which Saka duly delivered on. Do you think, one, do you think it was a penalty? And two, do you think Ederson should have had a yellow card?
So I think it absolutely is a penalty, 100%. I don't think it matters that Eddie Nketiah has already taken the shot, because as you see, anywhere else on the pitch, if a player was to, if a player was to pass the ball or the ball was to then move on, if a player then came flying into them, they'd say, "Oh, that's a late challenge," and they'd give a foul. So why would it be any different in the box? If a goalkeeper makes that challenge and he completely takes Eddie Nketiah out, then for me it's a stonewall penalty. I don't think there's any two ways about it. And the ref saw it, and I think the ref was waiting to see if it was to go over the line or not first, because I think if it does go over the line, then he probably doesn't even think about it. But yeah, definitely a penalty for me. What was the other question?
Well, basically, I was watching the game in the pub and everyone was saying, how has he not had a yellow card? Because he already had a yellow card for time wasting, I think, maybe 5-10 minutes before that. It was so loud in the pub and the commentary was turned down quite heavily. I don't know why. So I couldn't really understand whether that was even a topic of discussion, whether VAR even looked at it. But everyone was saying, how is that not a yellow? And I've not really seen much talk about it on social media or amongst anybody else, to be honest. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, really.
Yeah, so on the commentary, the referee that they always rope in to comment on these things when it comes up. He gave a flippant response, as they usually do, which didn't really make any sense. And he said the reason why it wasn't a second yellow card is because it was careless and not reckless, which, you know, I just think that's really a bogus way of saying they can't explain why they didn't give a second yellow card, so they're just going to use some terminology. But for me, I think you've got to give a yellow card there. You absolutely have to, because if Edison, for example, if he wasn't already on a yellow card, I think 100% if he gives that foul away, then the ref gives him a yellow. I think that there's no two ways about it. He's taken Nketiah out, he's given away a penalty, and it's a yellow card. They would give a yellow card for that, but because he's already on a yellow, I think in the spirit of the game and trying to keep it flowing, you know, not ruin it as a contest and all that, but that shouldn't come into it. It should be the rules of the game. It should be a second yellow card, and for me, he should have walked. But that's what they said on their commentary. Careless, not reckless.
Well, that's interesting, but you know, I'm trying to make sure I'm coming at this from a non-biased point of view. But you know, if Ramsdale had done that, ran out, both feet off the ground, takes out a player, impedes them from scoring the goal, he gets a shot on target, ish, but you know, it's a scuffed opportunity and not easily, but cleared by Ake. But that resulted in him not being able to shoot effectively. Essentially, he's just basically rugby tackled out the game, like both feet off the ground. I don't know how that isn't a yellow card. And like you say, I wonder if it was the fact that he already was on a yellow card that played into the decision a little bit. But these are the things that really, really annoy me, because it shouldn't affect anything. Like, you know, we were jesting about it in the previous podcast about how we're owed a bit of goodwill because of the recent Brentford game with the lack of drawing the offside lines. But you know, that's clearly not a thing, or it's clearly still in the minds of the referees where they're trying to keep the game flowing and things like that, because I just don't get it. I really can't get my head around how that isn't a yellow card. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. And also going back to the terminology that he is using, the careless, not reckless thing. Does that mean if you make careless challenges, then you are unable to receive a yellow card? Because not every yellow card that's given is given for a reckless challenge. There's a lot of yellow cards that are given for careless challenges. You know, sometimes people just leave a leg in, like not thinking properly, or they don't always have malicious intent when they're making these yellow card fouls. Sometimes they just get caught off the ball and they pull up, accidentally get a tangle of legs, and it's careless. They say, "Oh, that was a careless challenge, a bit of a silly one, yellow card." So that for me is a cop-out, and it just really bugs me when they always try and find these loopholes to explain the reason why they make these decisions, try and dig them out. But it's just ludicrous. And also, talking about yellow cards, Bernardo Silva in that first half should have received a yellow card way before he actually did receive yellow card. And I know this sounds kind of minor, but it really isn't, because he was up against Bukayo Saka on that side, and Bukayo Saka had him on toast. And every single time he was getting near him, he was pulling him down, he was tripping him over, he was making fouls on Saka. And if Bernardo Silva had received a yellow card for maybe his first 4 challenges, then, you know, he's walking on eggshells for the rest of it. So by the time he actually received his yellow card, he should have already had maybe 2. So what do you think about that?
So true. And again, everyone in the pub was screaming for it. Like, how is he getting away with this? You know, second time he should have been booked, because it was clear that he was doing it to bring him down, to stop the break. You know, you can't just keep doing that repeatedly. You know, you get away with it on, you know, for the first time maybe, but not the second. It's annoying, because I hate just talking about refs all the time, because it does just bore me a little bit. But you can't help but wonder, you know, if these little things were gone our way, could we have been looking at a different scoreline, especially if they've gone down to 10 men. That changes the game completely, obviously. And it's interesting what you say about what was the two terms the refs used.
Careless, not reckless.
This is another thing that happens with referees. They seem to sort of tarnish certain players. Xhaka is the cliche example of, if Xhaka made that foul, he seems to be tarnished with that reckless tagline, whereas somebody like a Bernardo Silva, it could just be careless because he's not that sort of player. So it becomes like it becomes like a different call just based off like unconscious bias in the ref's mind. So I do think that has played into it a little bit, which again it shouldn't do.
Yeah. One thing that I would say is if we cast our minds back to the Arsenal versus Man City game last January at the Emirates, Gabriel got sent off and his second yellow card wasn't reckless. It was for a careless shoving, like a careless coming together at the halfway line, wasn't it? That wasn't a reckless challenge, but he got given a second yellow card for that because it was careless. And then we were down to 10 men. So, where's the consistency here? It's not like it swings and roundabouts and one game you're going to get it and one game you're not. It seems like we get in the rough end of it all the time, and it's really, really frustrating. And as you say, I hate talking about refereeing decisions, but it just seems like we're getting so much bad luck recently. I think if we're to give any kind of real credit to the VAR and the refs from last night's game, they actually made a pretty good call on when Gabriel gave away a penalty on Haaland, and to then look back and see that he was marginally offside in the build-up, so it wasn't given as a penalty. So if you're going to give them any credit, that's what VAR is for. Offside, it's not down to interpretation, as we should have seen in the Brentford game. And they saw that it was offside and it was ruled out. So that's what VAR is for and what it should be implemented to do. But apart from that, there was that
was a proper sigh of relief moment, wasn't it? Like we was proper under the cosh at that point as well, weren't we? And I was just thinking, they're going to capitalise now, and is Gabriel going to be in trouble with a booking or whatever? But he did get a booking, didn't he? But it got taken back. So thankfully that worked out there, but as it should, he was clearly offside, and they still took about 5 minutes to decide that one. But going back to Saka's penalty, I just want to, the silver lining and all, what a well-taken penalty, because Ederson was really trying to get into his head, wasn't he? He was probably pointing down at that at the corner that he actually ended up slotting it in, as if to say, put it here, mind games and all that. Saka was just like, yeah, all right, I'll put it there for you. Ederson dived the other way. So I really like that from Saka. And just before... because Odegaard was the one sort of shielding the ball, taking all the flack from the players, and then handed it to Saka to take the penalty out. I wondered, is Jorginho going to take it? Because we all know this, the little stigma around him with penalties. But I'm glad Saka got that one, and hopefully he can sort of use that as a little bit of fuel to kick on a little bit, because I think he's deserved a goal recently, and he's not been on the score sheet much.
No, he hasn't, and it's good that he's scored again, and hopefully he'll be able to kick on in our next run of fixtures. But yeah, I do really enjoy that when you see a goalkeeper point into a corner and then the player actually goes for that corner and they score, because it leaves them with egg on their face, really, doesn't it? Because if he goes the other way and then Ederson saves it, then it's like, oh well, I tricked you mind games, but Saka, he proper mugged him up there. So I was happy to see that happen. But so after half time, and we had been pretty dominant in the first half in terms of the way that the teams were set up, Pep actually made a few tweaks to his system. I think he realised that Bernardo Silva was getting overrun on that side, and then he brought it back to a back four, didn't he? And then he had Ake being more of the left back against Saka, and I feel like his initial shape starting the game was the wrong shape, whereas after he made those changes, it did start to nullify us. We were struggling to then break them down.
Oh, massively, yeah. That substitution really did work, didn't it? And it's frustrating because I looked at our bench to what could we do to combat that, and it just wasn't. There was no real clear, obvious choice, was there, that we could do. In fact, I was looking with the substitutions that we actually made. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, he's made the same sort of substitutions that he's made in the last two games at Brentford and Everton that just haven't worked. You know, Vieira has been, and I hate to say it, but it's just been awful coming in. He's had no impact whatsoever off the bench. Trossard's done well, but it's like for like, you know. I want to see something that we're chasing a game here. I want to see something attacking, more attacking. I just wondered, you know, could we have got a Tierney on the pitch for Xhaka and pushed Zinchenko up a little bit further, you know, something like that, or maybe put Trossard in the midfield or something, just something to mix it up a little bit, and if there's one weakness in Arteta at the minute, it's his substitutions for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And I feel like somewhere where we kind of went wrong in this game was taking off Martinelli, because I don't think he was having a bad game. I think he just wasn't getting the correct service, because there were 2, 3, 4 different times where Xhaka or Zinchenko could have played him through, and they just delayed and they dilly-dallied on the ball, and eventually the chance had gone, and there wasn't the opportunity to then play him through. But I felt like if you could have either a Trossard or someone of that ilk to then be dovetailing with Martinelli on that side, then we might have had a bit more joy over there. Kyle Walker, he was on a yellow card, so if you've got, you know, two tricky players that are zipping round you, maybe even because Nketiah was having a bit of a bad game, maybe drop him and change him for Trossard, and then have Trossard, Saka and Martinelli all dovetailing and, you know, linking up together and breaking them down. But yeah, I feel like he made the wrong choices, really, and we just became too rigid. Vieira, disappointing. And Trossard, he looked all right, to be fair, as he always does. He you know, it does what it says on the tin with Trossard. But I think it was the wrong choice taking him off for Martinelli in this particular game, because I feel like we needed all the firepower that we could get, and we were just making a like-for-like switch, really, weren't we? So that was unfortunate.
Yeah, I completely agree. We just need to have some sort of other option that can really kick us on and maybe just find that extra little dynamic. And I actually thought Martinelli had a really good game. We said it in the preview podcast, didn't we? This could be the sort of game that plays to his strengths a little bit more. And I think he did that. I think he did really well. So to take him off, not for me. That was a silly decision.
Yeah. So should we talk a little bit about the second goal that Man City scored? And this was another gift from Arsenal, really, wasn't it? We'd been under pressure whilst we were in possession. We couldn't really play it out from the back four. And we were trying to. We were doing everything within our power to play out from the back. And it was just a really silly back pass from Gabriel, wasn't it, to basically through ball, passed it to Bernardo Silva, who then played a nice through ball to Haaland, who then passed it across. Gundogan put it on a plate for Grealish, didn't he? And then I think we were quite unlucky because it just takes a nick off Tomiyasu on the way through, which just bounces it over Ramsdale's hand, or else I think Ramsdale would have saved that. But it was our own undoing.
Oh yeah, yet again, you know, you can't afford to give Man City these little chances, because they will punish you. And this is what adds to the frustration, because we've just gifted them these 2 goals out of not nothing, because they were putting the pressure on us, but we were coping with it, and then to concede in this manner, it's just really, really frustrating. But yeah, I agree. I think Ramsdale would have had that because it wasn't the best shot from Grealish, to be honest. The angle would have been tight and it was obvious he had to go in that far corner. I think Ramsdale would have had it. Tomiyasu, like, you can't blame him too much, can you, to be honest? He's got to try and clear it, but if you're going to try and clear it, you've got to make proper contact with it. You can't be that can't happen. So I'm sort of a bit torn with it, really. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try and make a block from a shot, you've got to get your feet on the ground, as in make yourself a block. Do you know what I mean? You can't just stick a leg out because there's always the chance that it can deflect and then whatever just happened. Then I think was it Peter Schmeichel who used to absolutely rage at players. He used to say, if you're going to try and make a block, make sure you make the block, because otherwise I want to see the ball. I want to see where it was going. I don't want any deflections. But yeah, that's exactly what happened there. And it is frustrating because Man City weren't really breaking us down. We weren't really breaking them down too much either. It was kind of like a slugging match at that point where neither team were breaking each other down. But for it to come from a silly mistake like that, it's in such a massive game as well. It is really infuriating. But it's one of those things where it's like, how are they going to change that? You're going to go back to the training ground on Monday or whatever, and it was midweek game, so training match today, and then you say, well, what can you say to your player? You can't say to them, oh, can you make sure you don't pass it to the opposition, because they know that it's not something that they need to be taught. Yeah. It's just a rash decision that he made, and unfortunately, we got punished. And as you said, that was the tale of the game today. There were very few chances for either side, but the chances that we had, we weren't clinical. The chances that they had, they were super clinical. And I think that shows you the bridge between us and Man City at the minute. I think we're a great team. We've got great potential and very high ceiling. But Man City are just on another level. They're a world-class team, probably been the best team in Europe over the last 4 or 5 seasons. So for us, in a way, to go toe-to-toe with them and outperform them for the first half, but for some stupid defensive errors, it is encouraging in a way, that we have definitely elevated our level of performance over the last couple of seasons. But it just reflects that we have some serious work to be able to get to that level.
There's still serious work to be done. But yeah, like you said, there's so much encouragement, especially with the fact that they're all such young players with that room to develop and grow and learn from these sort of errors. And the occasion as well can get to players of this sort of age. So there's massive positives to take. We kind of went toe-to-toe to them in the FA Cup as well, to a degree. So it's not just a one-off. We've done it twice, but unfortunately, we paid the price twice as well. So it's just hopefully something we can learn from and move on from. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. So going into the second half a little bit more, would you say that was there many clear opportunities to get it back to 2-2, or do you think that it sort of deflated us a little bit and sort of knocked the wind out of our sails?
Oh yeah. It was like a sucker punch, really, wasn't it? Because it felt like after we'd equalised, we were just trying to build and build to then hopefully try and break them down and create the perfect opportunity. But we weren't really having many opportunities at all. And yeah, as soon as we had that goal that we conceded, you could see the boys' heads start to drop because they'd been pegged back once, and then they'd fought so hard to get back the equaliser. For it to then happen again, it is, it's a real mental battle to try and drag yourself out of that hole to be able to go again against Man City. And especially when once they'd changed the shape, we were struggling to play against that as well. So I think it was always going to be a struggle as soon as we conceded. And, not too long after, they ended up getting their third, didn't they? Which was another, they didn't have many opportunities, but they really did, finish this one quite well. And I think De Bruyne was able to have too much license and drifting down that side. And then with his quality, pulled the ball back to Haaland, who, just what Haaland does and scores. And I thought we'd done well to keep him out for the majority of the game, but it just seems inevitable that he's going to score, doesn't it?
Yeah, and looking at that's the big difference, isn't it, between our number 9 and their number 9 is he gets a little sniff of a chance and he takes it. What can you do about that? There's nothing. Whereas there's no gripe on Eddie. I think he's done really well since coming in, but there's poles of difference between the two players. And I think that is one of the main differences in this game. Is just we didn't have somebody to finish off our chances that we really needed to take and at such crucial points in the game. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there was maybe a case that Haaland shouldn't have even been on the pitch, though, at that time to be able to score that goal? Because I know we've already talked yellow cards and potential red cards and things, but I think this was another scenario where Haaland could have maybe got himself sent off. It was a few minutes before that goal that he scored. Him and Gabriel, they had that coming together, and there was words exchanged afterwards. Yeah. And then not long after then, Haaland puts a pretty nasty elbow into the back of Gabriel's head. And from the first initial replay, it looks like he just kind of slaps him with his hand, and then there's a bit of a follow through. But then when you see the next angle, Haaland's actually running in. He takes a look at Gabriel, knows exactly where he is, jumps up, elbows up, right into the back of his head, and he knows what he's doing. And so I don't know if that would be classed as reckless, not careless, but it wasn't my book.
And this was just after the penalty incident that wasn't awarded eventually through VAR, wasn't it? So it was clear frustration from the fact that he got away with that. So he got a little bit of a dig in at Gabriel after that. So yeah, you got a point. I haven't really thought about that too much, to be honest. So he was already on a yellow card before, was he?
No, he wasn't on a yellow card, but I meant, just for misconduct. He's elbowed someone in the back of the head. So
it could have been red. Yeah, no, that's a good point. But yeah, we just didn't get the rub of the green with things like that, did we? Today, it's we're never going to get stuff like that. I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's clutching at straws a little bit, though, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think if you're to take this game in isolation, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to lose to the champions, with all the quality and wealth and depth. I think it just hurts so much more, the fact that we've had such disappointing performances leading up to this game. I think, we've been on cloud 9 for so long at the top of the league with points separating us, for us to then drop points at Everton, drop points at Brentford, and then for the game that we then knocked off the top of the table to be against second place, it does just feel that much worse. But there's still a lot of football to play. We've got a favourable fixture list coming up in the next 9 or 10 games or so. We've got a game in hand. We're still joint top of the league, so it's not time to get the pitchforks out and start setting Arteta out. And we've got Gabriel Jesus who's soon to come back. We've got Emil Smith-Rowe who's soon to come back, hopefully, unless he gets injured again. And obviously Thomas Partey will come back into the fold once he's come back from his injury. So there's a lot to be optimistic about. It's not all doom and gloom, but it just feels like that at the minute.
Yeah. Yeah, massively. But I think you hit the nail on the head. As a broad view, it's not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing is the fact that we've lost these previous games and dropped points in games that we should have really picked up 3 points in. But like you say, we've still got a game in hand. And there's a lot of football to play. They're not going to win every single game. And we've still got to go to their place. I know a lot of people will think, we've got to go away. It makes it even harder. But like you say, Jesus will be back then. We'll have Partey playing. We'll have Smith-Rowe as an option. it will be a bit of a different game, and hopefully we could have learnt from these lessons and just be a little bit more streetwise and a bit more mentally tougher. So hopefully we can get 3 points away and nullify each other out in terms of any points gained on one another. So, but I wouldn't focus on it too much. I think we just need to take each game as it comes now, and it really sort of emphasises the importance of this upcoming fixture against Villa, because that on paper is a very winnable team. Does that worry you a little bit? Maybe the return of Unai Emery. He's already haunted Arteta once in the Europa League. Do you think? How do you think that game's going to go?
Well, there's definitely like a narrative already there about the whole Unai Emery coming back and potentially haunting his old team and things like that. So they're definitely going to try and bring that up. But there's not that many Unai Emery players left in the team, to be honest. So yeah, I don't think they'll have too much of a gripe about that. But yeah, there's going to be a bit of needle to that game. But every game in the Premier League's difficult, and we've done so well to win so many already this season. But if we're going to be going toe-to-toe with Man City points-wise in the table, then these are the games that you've got to win, So fingers crossed we can get the job done, and hopefully we can get the job done in the next 7 or 8 fixtures, because if we are to go on a little winning streak after this, bit of a dip in form in the season, then we could be right back up there, and it will almost be forgotten about. So you can't lose faith just yet. It's still joint top. I know it feels deflating and it's horrible to keep saying it, but we can't.
No. And there's a nice little quote from the king himself, Thierry Henry, as well, that sort of is just trying to boost morale a little bit for the Arsenal fans. And essentially it's, they came to your place, as in City, they beat us. Can Arsenal now show how they can respond? Can they go to Villa and rectify that? They just need to stay calm. We lost against a great team. We need to keep our composure. It doesn't mean everything has to go to the bin. We've still got a game in hand. And it's just very much like, it's just sort of look into the positives. If we'd have been offered this opportunity to be here at the start of the season, no Arsenal fan would have turned that down. We're in a great position. We just need to reset, recalibrate, I think, and look at all the positives. How many times have we been in this position before in the Emirates era? We haven't really. Apart from maybe that Leicester season where we were in with a shout. But I think we need to just look to the positives now and use that as our morale, and not get ourselves stuck in a rut about what's just happened, because it's in the past now. Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, it's all about the timing of games and things like that as well. Because, for example, if Man City hadn't played an extra game, then we'd still be 3 points ahead of them. So we would look at this game and go, oh, well, we still got 3 more points on the board. We just need to not slip up anymore. But because they've already played an extra game and it knocks us off the top, it makes us panic a little bit. And then if you think of it another way, for example, if we were chasing Man City and at this point of the season, we managed to draw level with them on points, but we've got an extra game in hand, we would be looking at the table thinking, we've got a real chance here. We're joint top and we've got an extra game in hand. Like it's all dependent on the run of fixtures that you've just had, the whole mood around the camp. Yeah. But if the boys can put all of that out of their minds, just be professional, get the job done against Villa, and then go game by game like we have been doing, then of course we're in with a shot.
Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. Is there anything else we've missed, or anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
No, not really. I'm just a bit disappointed today, but quietly optimistic about the weekend. Okay,
well, I hope that wasn't too deflating for everybody, and it's provided you with some form of solace. I know it's difficult, but hopefully it has. We've got an upcoming game against Villa, as we've just spoke about. That's the early fixture on Saturday, I believe. So we've got a chance to get 3 points in before Man City and put a little bit of pressure on them. So fingers crossed we can get something in that game. The podcast for that should be out sort of Saturday evening time, maybe late afternoon. So keep your eye out for that. But as always, thanks for listening and take care.
Take care.